Welcome Praetors, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and today we're going to be doing another list building, this time regarding my particular Sons of Horus list that I am building towards for Horus Heresy 3rd edition. I did something like this a couple weeks ago for my good friend Matt over at Pop Goes the Monkey regarding his Alpha Legion. He had this idea for a sniper list, and I made a video basically detailing how I turned that concept into a 3,000 point list. I made a few minor mistakes in terms of equipment on like 2 of the units, but nothing really a big deal. People really seem to respond to that, not because it showed you how to make a good list in terms of effectiveness on the table, but it outlined my process of thinking on how we turn a concept into a playable force. And in the comments of that video, there were multiple requests for me to do my Sons of Horus specifically, just as another kind of low-hanging fruit to get into the rhythm of explaining how I approach list building organically, meaning the kinds of questions I ask, the thought processes I go through, how I evaluate units, that kind of stuff. And at the end of this, I'll have a 3,000 point-ish list for my Sons of Horus. I'm gonna be using New Recruit to do some of the math, and so some of the upgrades and stuff aren't quite in there yet, so be careful with New Recruit. But it will be soon. I think it's like 27 points off or something like that to account for Carceran axes or something. But in that last video, I made a 6-point list of basically how I go about list building in Horus Heresy 3rd edition. And I decided to make myself use that same list again for this video. So just reading it off very quickly, decide on the theme of your army, meaning how does it go to war, not like what legion is. Read the levers to note units that fit that description, right? And that's gonna help you eventually map out the detachments you wanna use based on what kind of slots you seem to be using the most of. You're gonna build your Crusade detachment and make sure you have some line troops in there. That ensures that you can score points, and begin in selecting and filling out all the different auxiliary detachments that you want, the ones that'll fit the most of the amount of troops you picked out earlier. And then like leave 100 or so points for a second pass so you can upgrade weapons, add voxes, stuff like that. And of course the last step, number 6, is just iterate. Find a problem the list has and then just try to make something better at it. So let's kick it off with a theme. In the last edition, I played a list that was called the Black Reaving. Back then, Rites of War were more about army construction formats. If you limited yourself to these kinds of units or these restrictions, you got extra rules. The one that the Sons of Horus had for the traders specifically was the Black Reaving, which was thematically to represent the Sons of Horus, or the Lunar Wolves. They're a vicious shock assault approach to things. They view themselves and name themselves the spear tip. Okay, like that's what their assault formations are called. So it's about speed and high aggression, and then everything else you just kind of play it by ear. Once the you punch a hole and then you see. A lot of that list had to be infantry because there was a big restriction regarding you had to have more fast attack than you did heavy support. So I had a bunch of like speeders in there to allow me to take even like a heavy weapon squad, something. The Gestarans were a big feature in there because they were given deep strike in that particular rite of war, all kinds of stuff. But it was very infantry heavy. That's what I want to do in 3rd. I want to essentially try and transpose the Black Reaving into 3rd edition. So that's going to mean highly aggressive infantry rushing. Now, personally, I've always favored the highly cinematic look of like hundreds of troops just running at each other. If you look at some of those early Horus Heresy books, that's like 90% of the covers is just seas of dudes running at each other and then one guy holding a fist up like, which is exactly what we're going for here. And to be honest, because of how Games Workshop has always kind of done rules writing, there are some huge upsides to this playstyle. For example, objective play tends to be much easier / successful with this. If I know that I have a bunch of troops who can go hop on an objective and score as many points as possible, as opposed to vehicles or bikers or something like that, I'm already in a good position to win. Now, I don't know if those troops will make it to the objective. They could get mowed down, but my point is that in my toolbox, when I come to a game, I have an oversaturation of ways to take objectives that my opponent then has to deal with. How I expend those lives will dictate whether or not they make it to the objective, but the point is it's in my list. It's there. It has to be dealt with or I win. And another upside to infantry in general is that, that scoring aspect is almost ubiquitous amongst them, but they can be kitted out to do just about anything. They can hold objectives in the form of tactical marines, they can provide heavy support with heavy support squads, target specific kinds of infantry with these special weapon squads. It's still infantry to say that a Saturnine Terminator with a machine hammer is in the play here. I'm not going to use the Saturnine dudes, they're not my favorite thematically, but that's the kind of thing. Infantry has a very wide scope in this game. But of course, that also comes with some downsides, right? The downside in most war games in general with going infantry heavy is that when you run into something with armor, you bounce off. Now, fortunately, because of my own personal wisdom, I've channeled the ethos of Zap Brannigan, and I'm more than happy to throw waves after waves of my own infantry to find the preset kill limit of my opponent's Flamer Predators, which makes me realize I probably should have played Iron Warriors, but we're here now. And while you can kit your Marines out with some high strength weapons, they will run into things that they struggle to just punch through. They're always going to struggle to punch through a Spartan. Only a few melee units can really boast enough strength to reliably take out, you know, a full hull point tank or something like that. It's pretty rough. So my point being is that not that it's like inaccessible or a bad idea, just that there are limitations. There are things I have to be aware of as well. So my plan from a conceptual level is I want to have stuff that has an emphasis on mobility. So I'm thinking of a lot of things in rhinos, and I do want some anti-tank with me. I'm going to have a Land Raider for my Justarin to drive around in. And I recently got a Sakaran Venator, which is an anti-tank tank, off of eBay for dirt cheap. So I'm going to throw that in there too, but the emphasis is on mobility. So this is a good time to pivot and chat about the Sons of Horus in general, the 16th Legion. Now I'm really going to focus on the different parts of their rule set that matter to our conversation here. For example, our Rites of War, the Legion Tactica, is called Death Dealers. Sons of Horus make volley attacks at their full ballistic skill characteristic. When a model with this special rule makes a volley attacks, it is not required to fire snapshots. What this essentially means for us is that any assault weapon, when you're going to move and charge and do all that kind of stuff, becomes immediately more brutal because you are firing at full ballistic skill. What this also means is that if you're in Terminator armor, some of those weapons get to count as assault for the purposes of, you know, rules and that kind of stuff and shooting. So my point is that the Justarin with their Bane Strike combi bolters, Bane Strike just means shorter range, has breaching. It's like an alternate bolter, not really that fancy. But like those weapons become much more deadly on the charge. And for units that have stuff like Vanguard, oh yeah, that's real great. There's an additional detachment called the Supremacy Cadre, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and you have 2 troop choices. There's an additional detachment called the Supremacy Cadre. And in this, you get 2 troop choices. Both of them are prime, 1 heavy assault, and 1 elite. We'll talk about that more here in a bit, but I just wanted to put it out there as part of the Legion page. And there's also an advanced reaction. And this simply means that when an enemy unit challenges me in combat, I can ignore them at no penalty if I have a higher weapon skill. Which the reason that that's important, and this had to be explained to me because I really wasn't seeing it, is when you challenge somebody, you effectively take that hero out of the greater combat. Its wounds can only go on to the challenger. So when you say no, right, you can now hit the rest of that tactical squad or whatever the hero is with, rather than them, which means you're probably going to have a much more of an effective blendering of dudes than anything else, which I do think will come up. And so the picture that I'm putting together, again, Rhino Rush, not Rhino Rush, because I'm only going to have a max of 4 for various types of troops, but I'm going to have a lot of vehicles, things mobile in the first turn, a lot of positioning round 1, maybe a few units on foot. I think in the end I ended up with 3 just to kind of cover objectives and stuff. But yeah, a lot of mobility, highly aggressive, rush forward. Let's equip some infantry. So step 2 on our process of making a list here is read the Libers and note units that fit those descriptions. Most of these are very common units. I don't have a ton of like crazy esoteric stuff from multiple armies. The units that I really wanted to put into the list because they're both thematic and fit the vibe I'm going for. I have a list here of Reavers, Justarin Terminators, which are the Sons of Horus specific ones. They are incredibly dangerous in combat. Despoilers, which are sort of the melee armed generic Marines, and also tactical Marines for taking objectives. And if I wanted to, I could dip into heavy and support squads to add special weapons, which I didn't end up doing, but they do stand out as being an option here. I do this step, as I said before, because it helps me start to think about what kind of troop slots I need, and therefore start to kind of help me prioritize the detachments I'm going to take. In this case, there's several troop slots, heavy assault for the Reavers, and elite slots for the Justarin. Now we're going to take a step back and start building our primary Crusade detachment, the big one with the leaders. Now the reason I brought up the Sons of Horus detachment early is because I'm actually not going to put any of my basic troops inside the primary Crusade detachment. I would rather take those Sons of Horus ones. If I take 2, that's 4 troop slots that are all prime rather than just 1, with no penalty. And I know I'm going to be using the elite slot for at least 1 unit of Justarin, and I know I'm going to need 2 slots of Reavers at minimum. So let's just do that. So I put that note out there so that when I started working on my primary Crusade detachment, I didn't worry about putting troops in there, frankly. But I know that I need leaders and I need rhinos to ferry everybody, so we'll kick it off there. Now, how do you start to choose heroes? Well, for me, it's deciding on the means of attack and how your list is going to function, which we've already discussed. What leaders in our list, or could be in our list, that would really facilitate that? And the ideas that stand out to me are, well, we know we're going to have Justarin in a Spartan, so putting a hero who's really good at combat and challenges with them, really good idea. We know that we're going to have Reavers and Rhinos, maybe putting a hero with them who's also good at combat. Again, not a terrible idea. And we know that we're going to be as hard as we can in our opponent's side of the table. We have a lot of Vanguard troops selected. So between the Justarin and the Reavers, they all have Vanguard, which means they get victory points for taking the enemy off an objective, but they're only worth 1 max if they are the ones capturing the objective. My point here is a really good hero choice, and one that fits thematically with the Black Reaving from 2nd edition, is the Master of Signals. The Reavers and Justarin go up, they capture, or they destroy something on an objective, and then the next turn we can turn them into line troops and they can actually start scoring it. So those are the kind of places I could see heroes having an impact, right? Obviously in melee with the Justarin going straight into the hardest part of the battle. A Praetor or a Centurion with the Reavers, I can kind of point them at whatever the biggest infantry threat is. And then a Master of Signals back in the backfield who's just there to flex his tactical muscles, I guess. Also, shout out to Black Reaving players who had to take Master of Signals before they were the hot thing. Now, I always go and do weapon upgrades later. Like I always leave a couple 100 points, or at least 100 for weapon upgrades later on. In general, right now, I will say I'm a little bit throttled by my collection when it comes to Terminator and Reaver weapons. I have a whole bunch of stuff on order, and I'll be building those over the next couple weeks to give me more options there, but I'm somewhat limited in that respect. My Reavers have chain axes. My Justarin, half of them are double lightning claw, half of them are power fist and bane strike bolter. Regardless, I'm getting ahead of myself. For the finishing of the primary Crusade detachment, we have our 3 heroes, because we know roughly where we want them to be on the battlefield. And we also need rhinos. Now, for me personally, I just like to generically kit out a rhino with a flamer. Like, just give it a rhino, a pinto-mounted flamer, and I think on 2 of them I have dozer blades because I modeled them that way, because why wouldn't you? They also provide some minor anti-infantry benefit with the flamer as you move up into the enemy and deliver the troops. Now the next step is to begin adding auxiliary detachments that we can fill up to kind of get the core of our list going. And at this point I had a decision to make, because there is a core detachment for taking 3 heavy assault troops. But I mean, like, I have a ton of Reavers. There are not a lot of weapon options to them, but I have a ton of them. I could do that. Or I could do, as we mentioned before, the 2 Supremacy cadres, the Sons of Horus specific detachment. The benefit there is, even though I'm limited now to 2 units of Reavers, which is fine, it makes all 4 of my now troop slots, because they each come with 2, prime, which is pretty stinking dope. So I went that way, because they make up an immense amount of my army, my infantry army. So yeah, let's make them cooler. So now our troops are in our auxiliary detachment rather than the primary Crusade one, which is fine. I know I want several units with line, and the way that I approach these supremacy cadres was I want a mix of tactical marines and despoilers. So for each of them, I put in 1 unit of despoilers, 1 unit of tactical marines. I'll talk about why I split them up that way. The short answer is I wanted Master Sergeant on the despoilers so that they could get into challenges, but that one's limited to once per detachment. So that's why there's a despoiler unit in each of the Supremacy cadres. And then below them with the tactical marines, they both took combat veterans. That starts my list off with 4 base troops that have the line keyword, and also a 5th if the Master of Signals is Fuel and Spicy. That gives us 2 elite slots and 2 heavy assault slots. Well, for one of the elites, I'm going to put a big fat blob of 10 Justarin. There is nothing in the game, even if they can't be killed by the Justarin, there's nothing in the game that wants to deal with 10 Justarin, right? Like that just doesn't exist. Like I said, I'm going to do more building and fleshing out the options. Really what I need to add is a couple of Thunderhammer and then shield dudes. But this at least gives the list some direction. Now in that same detachment, I'm going to have a unit of Reavers. They come at a base of 5. These are essentially my veteran Marines for Sons of Horus, but what makes them unique is they have precision 6-up as a rule for the unit. So whether they're shooting with their Bane Strike combi bolter, not combi bolters, but Bane Strike bolters, or using a chain axe in melee, any 6s to hit, they get to allocate the wounds. So they're not only aggressive, but they can almost function as a melee sniper if you're trying to take out a hero. Now I could max them out to 10, but for this unit, I'm going to do 9, and I'm going to put one of my heroes in there with them. As far as the spread of heroes, just kind of backing out a little bit, what I landed on is I'm going to have a Centurion in Cataphracti armor go with my Justarin. I'm going to have my Praetor, who I just love the model of the non-Terminator Sons of Horus Praetor. I'm going to have him go with this unit of Reavers. Master of Signals will just hang out with someone in the back. That completely fills up one of these detachments. For the second, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a second unit of Reavers, this time bringing it up to 10 to fill up the car. And so popping out of all of it, it gives me, again, 4 sources of line, 5 if I'm feeling spicy. I now have 2 huge melee threats in the forms of my Reaver Rhinos that are highly mobile. I have a Justarin unit. I'm going to throw the Spartan in there in a second, but a Justarin unit that will hopefully be delivered to the enemy that they have to deal with. Things are getting scary, but I've only taken 2 of my 4 allotted auxiliary detachments, assuming I don't take an Apex one. So I decided to be really, really simple here and just bolt on the detachments I needed for both the Spartan Land Raider as well as the Sicaran Venator. This left me with somewhere in the vicinity of like 270 or something points, with some upgrades, whatever. For the time being, until my bits come in and I can flesh out the weapon options or whatever, to fill in that bolt of space, I have this unit of Breachers that I just started painting and I really want to put them on the table. So I'm going to throw them in there, but with the caveat of the minute I have the upgrades to make my other troops more deadly, I'll drop these guys and use that space for that. I did a couple passes just to try to rearrange some troops to see if I can get some more detachments in there, or get as many prime advantage slots as possible. And so what I'm going to do is fast forward through that and just walk through my final list with you. This army is about being aggressive and mobile. And all but 3 of these units start in vehicles. We'll start off with the command choices that I mentioned. We have the Centurion in Terminator armor, and his prime advantage is Paragon of Battle. So he is going to be a beast in combat, and he's going to be delivered in a Spartan Land Raider along with his Justarin buddies. And at the start of the game, I'm just going to pick whatever seems to be the scariest thing my opponent has and point the Spartan at it. Both the tank and its contents will be focused on dealing with that. Besides that, in the Prime Crusade detachment, there are 4 Rhinos. And when the game starts, those Rhinos are going to be filled with 2 units of Reavers, one that has a Praetor, bolting straight to the nearest objective to clear enemies off. And then also in the other 2 Rhinos are a pair of Tactical Marines to follow them up. Now I could switch the Tactical Marines with the Despoilers, but my logic here is if I give the Despoilers the Master Sergeant upgrade, I actually want them out of the Rhino to be able to run up and intercept infantry to challenge them. So that's my logic. If you have a better idea or understanding of why it would be different to do it the other way, please let me know. But as I said, I gave the Despoilers the Master Sergeant, which is once per detachment. So as they're running alongside, if they encounter anything, they can charge and challenge them. The spoilers are not here for a long time, but they're here for a good time. The Tactical Marines, both of them are upgraded with combat veterans to keep them on the board longer, as well as Vox upgrades. Then there is the Sakaran, whose sole job is high armor hunting. Whether it's a tank, heavy transport, a battery emplacement, I don't care. Anything that needs to die, this thing has the gun to do it. Because the rest of my army, barring the last cannon array on the Spartan, is pretty pillow-fisted. And as I said at the end here, I had some extra points at the time before my upgrade sprues came in, so I threw in some breacher squads to play defense. Now, is this a good list here at the end as I'm kind of walking through my thoughts? That's difficult to say. I've used all my prime advantages, try to get as most as I could. I have a mission for every unit, and I have known strengths and weaknesses, which to me makes a compelling Horus Heresy list, right? And it's no fun to power game. It's really cool when you're great at one thing and then you're really bad at another. And there's this nice little push and pull and you have epic moments with your opponents. I think the real problem I'm going to run into is that my Reavers don't have enough killing power. They don't have the dual lightning claws to really hack into infantry. And they don't have Thunderhammers to be able to do stuff against anything heavy. Likewise, my Justarin, the Power Fist is a fantastic weapon. It just really is when it comes to Terminators. If I want to point them at something, I would like to get some Storm Shields and Thunderhammers, as well as really probably just a bunch of the heavy weapons too. I actually don't have any of the heavy gun weapons for Terminators, so that could be a cool way to expand as well. But what I'm going to do is play this, right? And I'm happy to report in if you're interested in this. But play it a few times, and I'm going to iterate on it. And the iterations, of course, will start with weapon upgrades for those troops that I know need them. But from there, it's just, asking questions like, is the Venator killing tanks like I need it to? Could I do something better there? Same thing goes for the infantry. I assume the Reaver squads will kind of expand in points as I add a bunch of stuff to them. So the breachers might go away. That's all right. Conversely, the breachers might super impress me and something else jumps in there. I've also considered dropping the despoilers for assault marines with jetpacks. We'll try that in the future. But it's exciting because it gives me some direction to go for my collecting, starting with fleshing out the units I own and then dipping my toe into stuff in the future. So that's my Sons of Horus and my logic behind them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're a Sons of Horus player, you have more experience, please leave in the comments. I treat everything here as if you're trying to be helpful, and I pin the most helpful comments to the top for other viewers to learn too. And if you like this style of video, or it's just kind of a casual throwing ideas out there for how to play a Legion or how I approach things, please leave in the comments down below because I'll keep making them. Anyway, thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you in my next video. Happy wargaming, friends.